Okay, so this video is going to be called Food for Thought, and that is not something that I normally touch on. Um, One, because I'm not so good at the thinking, and two, I've let the diet go in recent times. Now, by that I mean that, I don't I don't make videos usually about physical practicalities, even though, of course, they are part of a matrix or part of the earth. But, I am doing this by request, really, reluctantly, but I have touched on it slightly a while back. And for the same reason, I don't go into details. But, if you're going to talk about food, um, and I don't know what I'm talking about here, by the way, I might add that. It's, as I say, it's fairyland, and I have no idea really what I'm going to say. Um, so I should probably delete the video before I start, but I wasn't even going to make it because I was not feeling good. So this is because, yes, of course, there is food for thought and there is food for the body. I feel not qualified to talk about the body in any way, and also if I was at a higher spiritual and physical level at the present time, I wouldn't be reluctant to comment, because I think that if you have your own personal experience and you understand how you're feeling, and if your body is functioning at a level that it should be functioning at, then I have no problem talking about things, and even offering a little tidbit of advice, like you might. But either way, I'm going off track here. In the Matrix, you know, you can talk about diet and what people consume. And, I have been, in my own personal experience, I won't go into details, but I would honestly say that from when I was 14, 15 years old, right through to about 40, I was completely obsessed with food. I mean physical food. I don't mean thinking. No, I hadn't. My thinking was solely um, preoccupied with food to a large extent. Now, does that make me an expert on food? No. Do I want to talk about it? No, I don't actually. But the dog over there wants to talk about it because actually the dog is hungry. Well, he wants some chicken anyway. In fact, the dog, this is interesting too, and this is personal, of course, which should be of no interest. Um, I buy the dog a chicken every couple of days. A whole chicken, I mean. And he consumes that over about 2, 3 days, depending on how much he eats. Only because, he has been under physical deterioration, and in very recent times. When I say recent, I mean like the last month. But obviously, you know, he was almost on death's door, you could say, 4 months, 5 months ago. In fact, I thought he was gone. I've mentioned this, I think. And so, the regular diet, which normally he would not consume so much protein because actually that makes him itchy and then he attacks himself. So my point, and so, so therefore the chicken was to build him up and to get him back from a skeleton. Well, he wasn't a skeleton, but he deteriorated over a few days and couldn't walk and couldn't do anything over a period of a few days. Now, to me, all these things that happen, to me personally, I find it against nature, most of what I see. I don't, because most people see everything as natural and they see everything as fitting a logical conclusion, even with health, even with animals, with yourself, with everything. They will find a logical explanation for quick deterioration. And of course there always will be, as I've said, in a matrix there will always be 3 alternative ways of looking at things, maybe more. Like that song, Human by the Killers. Are we human or are we dancers? Are we human or are we dancers? Are we human or are we dancer? It says on the actual lyrics, if you look up the actual song, which you might want to do if you're interested, instead of saying dancer, it says denser. D-E-N-S-E-R. I would say that I am very dense. That is actually true. This is going way off the topic, but it's all about the body and food and a diet, or what you take in, whether it be food for thought or food for the body. I don't know what I am talking about here. I have to honestly say that. But like denser, yeah, like right at the moment, I would say that I feel denser than what I have ever felt almost in my entire life. I mean, I have been heavy at times, and I'm heavier than what I would naturally be now, because the matrix directs and controls so much. So you have to really be, yes, at a higher frequency and always above your circumstances in order to not let the matrix medicate yourself even with food. Like like we do. And also like myself, if you get if you feel that the odds are against you, or if you feel that the matrix is too solid for you, you can throw in the towel to some extent. My father used to always say, never throw in the towel. Never throw in the towel. That means never give it away. Never, ever be defeated. No, even he was very much like that at a physical level, because he was a very physical man, and he'd be like, there's a solution to every problem. If you get a little ailment, there's bound to be a remedy. You get an illness, you change your diet, you change this, you change that. Some people look upon these things as a challenge. I would have looked upon this as a challenge in the past. Now, of course, I don't look at it as a challenge. I almost look down the barrel of a gun and look at defeat, because even though I don't think this is advisable, and I would hope that others don't do that, but like if you know the old saying, if you know your enemy, or if you know what you're up against, you can direct your energy and your effort and your thinking and your course of action to fix something up, whether it be in the body or anything. You can do that, but when you get to the matrix kind of reality, and particularly if you don't like an artificial reality and you have been under the illusion that you're in a natural reality, so and you deal with things naturally and you're fine with that, because I would have thought that the body, the actual body, and I really am talking against reality at the moment, because if your body is at its worst, it's very hard to exalt the body. But I make these videos for other people, not to bring other people down to my own level, even if you are at a low level. I mean, I think most human beings are not at a high level, but I could be wrong about that too, because that is what you see around, and what you see around is not always, it's like looking at different animals, as I've said before. Different animals, you can't look at a bird the same way as you look at a fish. They're different. I'm not making sense here, and I am being sidetracked by the Matrix. I'm sorry. And I say sidetracked by the Matrix because I mean that the circumstances, that are around you, even if you're making a video, will distract you and will take your train of thought, so that you make a lousy video instead of a halfway decent one. And okay, so we'll go back, if I can. See, I'm starting to get angry here now because because I'm being sidetracked. See, everything is frequency and vibration. Your own frequency and vibration. Then, contributes to you bring yourself down with your own frequency and vibration. Like if I got angry just now, and therefore that opens, as I've said before, the gate, even if it's only temporarily, for negative thoughts, negative energies to come in, negative entities to come in, however you want to think about it, because I'm trying to be fancy here for the video, and I'm not supposed to be making it on that type of thing. But when you're in that negative frequency, you become a lot more body directed, in the sense that that's when, yes, you can overindulge with bodily food and stuff like that, which because you see, you what they, I would imagine it's a bit like what they call self-medicating. Yeah, like I've done that myself. To where you don't feel good, you don't feel, you feel mentally negative, so therefore you use the physical pleasures of the Matrix to try to bring your frequency up. Because if you're like me, where you like the taste of food, as most people do, but also if you have been preoccupied with food from like an early age, a forbidden fruit even, shall we say, there again, because, oh dear, again, I'm rambling on about myself and I should be addressing the issue, but I'm trying to skirt around it and making no sense at all. But like if you, like I say, everything in the Matrix, you see, is of a double mind, of a duality, and a duality thinking even. Like, like I say, you can have an obsession with food. Even past an enjoyment, because I would say that in my early life, and even up to later life, and even still now, but not to the same extreme, you can have an obsession with food. It's not about saying, oh, I like food, or even I love food. It's a conflict with food as well. And that, of course, because there's nothing wrong, I wouldn't think. And there again, I'm only giving an opinion, and I shouldn't be giving an opinion. But like we live in a matrix. The matrix has physical things in it. We're not meant to. Are we meant to avoid all the physical pleasures? Well, that would probably be strange too. And how can you? If everything is physical and you come into a physical matrix. Okay, so it isn't real, but it appears real. Your senses perceive it as real. It's all part of the reality. So, and if you eat an ice cream and you really enjoy the ice cream, and you temporarily make yourself feel good, that is raising the frequency and the vibration, how can there be harm in that? Well, that's an interesting point. I don't know why I even said that. My videos are getting to be more ridiculous, but look, I'll try to get back to try to make some sense here, because I'm sorry that I did get sidetracked. I apologise for that. It's not entirely my fault. I know that I don't make the videos as clear or as I haven't got a good train of thought, and also I haven't exactly got a teleprompter. I'm trying to remember what I'm trying to say here, and it's only like a request really in a way, so I'm hesitant. But look, I think that with regards to what you take into your body, right? You have to, I'm just going to say it over and over and over again, even though it's repetitive and it's boring and it seems silly. But it is the bottom line, at least for me, at this point in time, as far as I know, okay? If I get some revelation that it's all wrong and that there's something, that it's not correct. But look, as far as I see it at the present time, you can ask about food for thought, food for the body. You can ask about diets. You can ask about fads. You can ask about fashions. A lot. Look, everything is of the matrix. Everything is of the matrix. Everything is of the matrix. There is nothing else but the matrix for us at the present time, for me at the present time. Everything is of the matrix. Everything is of the matrix. So it's the answer to every question. Everything is of the matrix. So if everything is of the matrix, because the matrix is, an unavoidable reality around you, it directs everything. The matrix, is part of your thinking. Because most people only get their ideas and their thinking from the matrix. So, if, like in my past, if I got faddish about foods or finicky about foods, that was of the matrix. Am I going to actually sit here and say that I was above the matrix and that I had full control, or that I went against the matrix? Well, I could be uppity and say at times I might have went against the convention of the matrix, shall we say. But, when you're talking about the matrix, boy, do I get sick of talking about the matrix. I know I'm laughing here, but in a funny kind of way, I like talking about it because it gets it off my chest. It's like you get angry, so I can spew it up to the matrix computer. Hopefully, though, that even though we're in a matrix, that there are some real human beings in amongst it all, and that's the only reason for talking into a technological device, expressing what the matrix already knows, but I'm sorry, but I'm getting sidetracked by the dog here at the present time, because the dog is licking himself too much. In fact, the dog has had an addiction. You talk about food addictions, obsessions with food. Well, the dog has had obsessions with licking himself in the past. In fact, he licks himself to not only the point of injury, but to injure himself. Now, why this is another story, because I cannot tell the owner what I would think about that. It's not uncommon for dogs or animals to do these things. But, what is the real reality behind why do you scratch yourself? When you get an itch, what is causing the itch? Is it on the outside? Is it on the inside? Is it in the environment? Is it one or two of those? Is it all three of those? All these things. That depends on how far you take the reality, or how far you think the reality infiltrates you, your body, your mind, your skin, your inside. And I don't know what I'm talking about again. I've got to get back on track here. The dog did that, you see. Because I was talking about the dog's diet, the dog's food intake. Do I believe that now feeding the dog, a whole chicken every 2 days, and don't forget that's with dry food as well, so it's not like just that, because the dry food is essential, for other things. But in the past it was better for him to eat more dry food. I can't believe I'm making a diet dog video. I should be on another channel or something. This is ridiculous. This is becoming ridiculous. I do hope some of the people listening have some sense of humour, because it is ridiculous. Even I think it is ridiculous. Okay, so, look, these are serious things, really. They really are. But what I'm trying to say is that, we're in a matrix. We're in a matrix. So everything is of the matrix. So therefore, like what we consume will be of the matrix. So, most most of us think that we're individual, intelligent, human beings that that have, choice, and that we choose what we eat, and that we choose what we think, and we choose this and we choose that. We do, but it is sifted through the eyes of the matrix. So therefore, like I would have to say in the past, like if I became obsessed or finicky about eating particular foods, thinking that they were beneficial in some way, was that me, or was that through the eyes of the matrix? I'm very sorry, I'll have to just stop here for a second before the dog creates an injury for himself, which then will make my life more difficult. Excuse me. Oh, see, the dog just then, he actually will, now this is going to go into another realm altogether. This is really going into another realm, and I didn't plan on this for the video at all. But you see, the dog in the past, he would lick himself and do it very quickly too, I might add. So I hope you don't think that we're all too neglectful. But also, you do have to sleep sometimes, so you leave an animal, when you go to bed, etc. But either way, I'm getting annoyed because I feel that I have to defend myself with, I've already said what happens with possession with the animals, because if the animals, are affected by the matrix, and then the animals affect you. All these injuries, they create pain and suffering for an animal if an animal injures and bites into itself. And actually, when I saw the dog, it's almost as though they get a taste for their own blood. And now I'm going to go on to blood, I suppose. This is not good and not natural, but these things can happen. Now, I saw it with the dog and I didn't understand it. It was very distressing in a way. But, there could be many ways of looking at why you would attack yourself. In the Matrix, most of us are attacking ourselves, I would say. That's certainly how I would say that even diet can be an attack on yourself, because, like when you eat too much or when you eat too less, or when you deprive yourself in some ways, a bit like, an example of that, I suppose, would be when you become anorexic or bulimic, when you don't eat much, and then you become so very slim or thin, and your body weight, I'm not sure how it works, but the amount of body fat becomes abnormally low. This is particularly true for some people than others, because we do have two distinct two different beings in the Matrix. They are both human, but they are both distinctly different. One complements the other, supposedly, but But like if you become very anorexic, if you can cease to be able to reproduce, for instance. So so that's one element, an interesting element of the side effect of trying to be too slim to fit a matrix ideal of what it is to be physically acceptable or attractive, depending on what you think about these things. But I say, is it what you think about these things, or is it what the matrix makes you think about things? Well, of course it's the matrix, because matrix is technology, and a lot of what we think about ourselves we get from technology, because we like where do you get even a fashion idea from? That's largely from technology or the matrix. In other words, from where you see it being shown that a particular thing is fashionable. Yes, food also can be a fashion, to where it might be fashionable to eat a particular food. I actually have seen examples of that and have been surprised by it in recent years, only in recent years, because I've been guilty of that myself in my life. When I say guilty of it, it can become, an addiction to particular foods can be seen in many ways. You can, it can become a fashion. It can become a health thing. The matrix says something is healthy, so you try to do the best by consuming what you think is healthy. But also it can become a fashion or an idea thing too. To where, like I can't think of some examples, but I'd heard of some in recent times, which I was surprised, but they were only largely in some areas. But also, I had heard, because I had only heard this, because I don't actually patronise these sorts of things, but I'd heard that a lot of restaurants even were catering exclusively to only certain types of foods. I don't mean like that it's just a McDonald's or a Chinese restaurant or something like that. I mean that they would be catering to what in the past would have been considered a very small, you would, like if you ran a restaurant and you had like a vegetarian dish, you would, most of your menu would 95, 90, probably 98, 99% of your menu would have consisted of anything that was not vegetarian, but you would have still had maybe just one or two things catering to a very small minority, because you knew that if you had a whole restaurant based on just vegetables, for instance, that your restaurant would not last 2 seconds. But I had heard that there were more, that not far from where I am, there's an area where this is reasonably common. So that's an interesting, would we call that a trend? I say that even food can be like everything else in the matrix, to where people jump onto what they call jumping onto the bandwagon. There's 2 reasons to jump onto a bandwagon, I would think. You might seriously think that it's beneficial for you at a health level, or you might seriously believe that you are doing some sort of good in the world or the community or some stuff like that. you know, and you don't, or you are, because we have different personality types in our world. I say world, but I really mean matrix. But you know, if you don't go, if there's anyone listening that doesn't go along with matrix, well, you know, say world. But I wouldn't think there would be anyone listening that probably does not think that anyway. But in my little limited thing, that's right. But you know, there, because of different personality types, and because the personality types in other videos I've discussed that, there's many reasons that people jump on bandwagons, on obsessions with everything from fashion to food to ideas to the world in any way, and because we have people now who, you know, more people that like to be seen to be doing something different or being individual, or that. Of course, being individual will then become the norm, so it's the majority. Because it's a matrix, eventually everything becomes the majority in a matrix. It starts out as a minority and then it becomes a majority. And then we have the matrix. Oh. So in a matrix, you have, you know, a confusing state, because, you know, you will have apparently plausible, you know, positive ideas in a negative matrix. And so then you jump on the bandwagon of the plausible, positive ideas. Because you see, it's like that, you know, that you could feel certain things about certain types of foods. You could feel that, you know, that it is not a good idea to eat certain things. The answer is, there is no answer because you're in a matrix. The answer is that you could, you know, like I have been there and done most of these things at a food, diet, taking into the body level, okay? So, you know, and then there's the spiritual level too. So you could spiritually think that you're doing the right thing, but you know, you're in a matrix, so you can't know what is going to be the correct choice. But if you tend to think like I do now, excuse me, sorry about that. I think this video will probably be wasted. See, it should be half the time making a video, but with all the distractions, I'm just going all over the place and wasting everyone's time, and I'm sorry about that, I really am. Now, I told you I didn't want to talk about the matrix issue of food. Well, look, you see, what I'm trying to say is this, is that because we're in a negative matrix, a negative God entity, trying to get back on track here, negative, pushing into negativity all the time, always directing to something that appears to be positive, but really underneath it, it will become negative. Look, I don't know, okay? And you know, I'm not going, but I am going to say, as I say, we live in a matrix. Everything is of the matrix. So I think the matrix just got me there. Look, everything is of the matrix. So at even a food for thought or food for body level, you know, if you are following the matrix, if you are following a current trend, if you are jumping onto a bandwagon, if you see the tables turning, like I have seen in the supermarket, the foods change all the time. And sometimes this is directed by positive human thought too. But it won't matter because you're in the matrix. So you have to look at it this way, I would say. And this is just a fantasy opinion, and you could say it's stepping into paranoia if you like. It's certainly going into fantasy realm. But you know, I think I might have mentioned this before, but I don't think I'm going to be able to actually continue the video. You know, I should be used to all this, but, you know, you should get used to a matrix after a certain amount of time. But I can honestly say that I don't think I shall ever get used to it. And no, I do not get used to it. But, excuse me. Okay, so am I going to say the dog's crazy, or am I crazy to, you know, I look crazy because then I lose my temper at a dog attacking itself, you know, because I know it's the matrix. But to an outsider, it's what it appears to be because they don't think that it's matrix. So with the food issue, you know, you could have many, many, many ways of looking at that. And because it's a matrix, how real is real? So I know that sounds ridiculous, and even I find myself ridiculous saying it. But is the food real? And is the source that it comes from, is that real? I mean, we do have a lot of genetically modified foods now, which I only learned this about quite recently, to tell you the truth. So this shows you how far behind I am. And then I get, you know, I'm taken by surprise, and so I overreact. But, you know, is that a good or a bad thing? Well, I would say that it's seeing it more real because because the matrix usually, everything in the matrix usually, as I say, happens very slowly. And when things happen slowly, you tend to they don't hit you with the same force. So, not unless it's like, oh, it's really serious, so you tend to think, oh, maybe that's not so good to muck around with that food. Maybe it would be better to keep the foods more natural. But at the same time, you might say, well, it appears to produce more of something. It might have some benefits. It might be a benefit in one way or not. Or it might be negative in one way and positive in another. Because I didn't actually realise myself that a lot of natural things were being manipulated or changed or enhanced even at the food level till quite recently. And when I say quite recently, I mean quite recently. And you had heard there was a little bit in the past, but I did not really realise. And I personally, of course, being anti-technology, and obviously believing nature to be already perfect, this is not obviously something that I think is that desirable. But but because we live in this matrix world and we're told certain things, and we're told that you have to provide a certain amount of food to a certain amount of people, a lot of these things appear to be quite necessary. Now, how necessary they really are, I of course would not know. That would depend on numbers. It would depend on the real reality of the matrix. All I know about the matrix is that I don't think that most of what I would think about it is so. So therefore, I suppose I would be doubtful of everything. But no, but then you're almost branching into what people would call paranoia. Someone said to me many, many, many years ago. Or I said to them, I think I'm a bit paranoid. This was long before I became aware of a matrix. This is a long, long, long time ago when I thought the world was just one big natural place with a few problems, as has always been the case. And I didn't greatly worry about even the problems. I mainly worried about my own personal problems. So, I said to someone, I think I'm a bit paranoid, and I got a surprise answer back because I didn't actually even believe it at the time. I said, well, maybe you're not paranoid, maybe you're just a little bit perceptive. I think that was the reply. Certainly that was the implication anyway. Maybe you're just seeing it a bit too clearly, and maybe other people think it's paranoid, but so that's another point too. But I would certainly say if you're in a matrix that paranoia is should be normal almost, but excuse me. Simba, I'm getting a bit sick of this. I know you can't help it. Sorry about that. No, the dog probably won't stop because he does things to exhaustion if he gets that obsession, and it could even be a physical thing, because the matrix is about taking over the mind, but it also is a physical thing. it's a physical reality as well, and the matrix has full dominion over all aspects of this world and over all aspects of the human beings that are in it, one way or another. And that will depend on, as I've said, it's a game, so it depends on how they want the game to be played. And in many ways, the more chaos that is created, or the more confusion, or the more, bipolar, I picked up that word the other day, that bipolar thing of going from one extreme to the other, that does create instability. Instability is not a good thing for high frequency, as you can imagine. All these things, they're all just part of the matrix. Everything is part of the matrix in answer to and reply to the idea of, following, food can be like a fashion, as can most things in the matrix. We're always, I'll just throw this in here for no reason whatsoever. But, like you can have many different views on food, and I could go into my own personal different things with food. See, I have no problem buying, a chicken for the dog. And, I don't know, it's supposed to be what they call a free-range chicken, because some of us humans have kind of pushed that mindset for the free-range thing. Now, we're in a matrix. Free-range, all natural. Extra this, extra that. You can eat this with and you'll have a clean body, and you'll also have a clean mind. We're in a matrix. Matrix is not about that, because a matrix, that might be how a human being might want to have things, or assuming you're even at a halfway decent level. I've always said that the human body, under even all things being equal, not being perfect, this perfection thing is another fallacy too. You don't have to have a perfect situation. You just have to have all things being a bit equal or not too bad. And the human body can counter quite a lot. And even at a mind level, the mind also can conquer quite a bit. It's only when it's pushed right into, where the matrix pushes right into total negativity, that the body can't regenerate itself quick enough to cope with the negative forces, shall we say. So it's like that. And, and then the matrix goes very negative. And if the human mind goes negative, then that opens the gate for the ability to hit the body with more negativity too. So it becomes, like I've said before, a catch-22, which is what I said, when I first started to make a video. It was like the catch-22, because even then, I can see it even more since then, because I get new information. Because even I knew that it was a matrix at some point, but I didn't, even I'm still amazed by how deep it goes in its very narrow, isolated, one-eyed view of what the Matrix wants as its reality. And all I can say is what I've said before, you're in a matrix, but it is not a matrix for a human being. It is a matrix for non-human beings, because it is a matrix of technology designed for those that use, are, and believe in and need technology. And it is their future, not mine, And it's their vision, not mine. And it's their reality, not mine. And it is natural for them. It is not natural for me, you see. So naturally, if you're in a matrix, you've went into an artificial world. You suppose yourself to be a natural being that has gone into an artificial world. Look, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. That is still the mindset. Even at a spiritual level, you're still seeing yourself as a natural human being. And that is what you think is the ideal state. That is what you think is how things should be. That is what you think is most beneficial to everything. You don't think that technology is a living, beneficial thing. I don't think that, okay? So, so if you do, that's another thing. Or you might be like, as I said before, this idea that you can have a bit of both. And I was certainly of that mindset in the past. Because like I was saying about the food and what you take in, the body doesn't have to have everything 100% perfect, because it can counter quite a lot. It's only if it's 100% negative that it falls right down. You know what I'm saying? So it is very much like that. And that is why it's why it is sad, to realise this. This was my, causes me a bit of negativity, which is also bad, because if I get negative and say, oh, it's sad that yes, it's sad that even nature has gone a screw loose and gone. I'm just looking at the dog there. See, this is no way to make a video, but this is what I'm trying to say. It's an unreality. It's all negative. Nature itself. Nature is perfect, in my opinion. So it doesn't need enhancements, and if it is enhanced, it is for reasons other than its total benefit. And that is because you're in a matrix. Because if you're in an artificial world, nature is not going to be given full prominence. But having said that, we're in a matrix, and yes, we can become faddish about nature, and that can also then become part of the matrix. And, in other words, you could, like if I talk too much about nature, and and in doing that, I'm criticising, a human being. I could be playing for the matrix. I think I'm playing for nature. I think I'm playing for myself, but I'm playing for the matrix. Everything is of the matrix. Positive things will be used in the matrix, but it will be used for the matrix. And the matrix is not a natural, positive world or force for a human being. Anything else? Who knows? Now, no, the dog does not do this normally. But if you're making a video, sometimes yes. Because the dog is of the matrix. Everything is of the matrix. The dog was took over by the matrix, 3 years ago. And probably before that. So I'm going to go on about the dog now. And I'm getting, I should laugh, but it's, I mean, even that is bad, to be angry and laugh and crying at the same time. I mean, this is all just, you're feeding a matrix. You're feeding a ridiculous unreality that shouldn't exist. But at the same time, if you say that, it's my reality, and the matrix probably wants me to think that. Maybe the matrix wants to destroy its own reality. Maybe the matrix wants to start again like so many other people. Let's wipe it all out and start again and have a clean slate. How are you to know, what these matrix entities want? But the only thing you can be sure of is that if you're playing and if you're reacting, you're probably giving them what they want, and even creating a situation, negativity, that they want. So yes, if you have a change where your supermarkets become filled with different foods, it is always of the matrix. Look, a lot of what happens in the matrix, appears to be positive. Because the human being is used to feed the matrix. And without the human being, there would be very little positive in the matrix. So therefore, a lot of people would not be happy with the matrix. So they need to be reassured that although things are not right, they're also not so wrong that everything's going to be over. But even having said that, fear is a big element in the matrix. So, fear that the matrix could be over, fear that natural things could be dying, fear that, you're doing the wrong thing or the right thing if you do this, do that. One food is good, one food is bad. It's all a matrix. Of course there is. At certain level, even me saying you're a spiritual being, so therefore there is, yes, a correct, a right thing, that would just be used by the matrix, because they're very, very, very up onto all of this. You can't push an idea unless it's good. It has to have a good human quality behind it. especially if you want to change people's generally accepted attitudes, just as you would have changed them 100 years ago to do things you don't do now, or to find acceptable to do certain things, to eat certain things. Some things are, we have all these things going on. We always have. But when it ultimately comes down to it, it will be the matrix. The reason I say that, is because things have gone too far now. A lot of people, I'm guessing that a lot of people, but probably not everyone, but are still under the illusion, okay, so I'll just give an example of this because it's a practical reality. I turned on the TV, would have been a month ago now, and I hadn't seen a lot of ads for a while because don't watch it as much, being more on the computer type thing where there's less ads. But, I saw an ad for yogurt. I think it was for yogurt. Yogurt is healthy, yogurt is good. I used to eat yogurt before it was fashionable, when they only used to have 1 or 2 tubs in the supermarket when I was almost a child. And now it's become like you have huge amounts. And now I don't worry about it, but that's the way it goes. But but they're advertising yogurt, and they have the children putting the yogurt into the tub, and and then you have the cows, these beautiful cows out in the meadow, and the children are going out and milking the cows and then putting it into the tub and into the yogurt, and then we eat the natural yogurt. I actually found this ad, I did find it funny. Sad, but funny. But, I just don't understand how people can watch the ad and not think that there's something a bit funny about it. And do people believe it? Well, it's a matrix, so of course we believe it, and of course that's a nice fantasy, a nice dream, nice reality. But anyway, that's. I guess I'm not sure if I'm making a point here or if I'm making any sense. But what I'm trying to say is that that's really not how we do things now, anyway, and at least not to my knowledge. I actually did think that was a reality in some parts not long ago. So as you can see, I'm as delusional as everyone else in the matrix. Maybe not delusional this very moment, but certainly have been. Because, the matrix is very much about what you want to believe and wanting to think that there is positive and wanting to think that you can that you have an effect on the matrix. Well, you do have an effect on the matrix if you're a human being, because your thinking is part of the matrix. But if you think I'm, if you believe that I'm going out there right now milking a cow and putting it into a tub and making some yogurt and then selling it out the door to the first person that comes along, then you've gone into fairyland. But also, this is fairyland for the young. You know, I mean, obviously, yes, there's poetic license with selling things. Of course, we know that, and you know, everything when you sell something, you exaggerate and you're selling a product. So most people do know that. I'm just wondering how far we do stretch our belief, though. Like, like we might not stretch it to quite that limit, but we still could be stretching it. I certainly was stretching it, so I'm figuring that if I stretched it up until recent times, maybe other people stretch it even more. And and the younger you are, you might actually think that there's some validity to these things, or some reality, in other words. I don't know why I mentioned that really, but I thought it was funny at the time. But I could go on about cows and chickens and things like that. That's not the sort of videos I make. you know, I have always liked chicken. I think I don't know whether that's relevant or not. You know, I like cows though. I've always liked cows. Um, I don't really know why, because I haven't actually seen a real lot up front. I don't know if I mentioned feeling uneasy at seeing cows in a truck on a station, many years ago. Now, I think this element might have been put in a movie which I actually haven't seen, but it was actually on the list that the dog peed on, and I was going to try to have a look at it, but I have not looked at the movie. I think it was called Cloud Atlas, but to tell you the truth, I actually was frightened to look at the movie, because I thought that, see, it's no benefit to me to look at movies that bring me even further down. Sure, they might have elements that I can pick up in them. That's what I say. It's a catch-22 in a Matrix. But I have seen snippets from this movie. You see, that's why I had it on the list, because I thought it had relevance. I think there was a scene in it where there was a truck with pigs on it, where some girl tries to give them some water. Now, this sort of thing, see, there's many ways of looking at a matrix. Many ways of looking at humans, many ways of looking at animals. There shouldn't have to be. This is why I don't go much on the reality. I shouldn't have to say there are many ways of looking at an animal. I shouldn't have to say there are many ways of looking at a human. I shouldn't have to say there are many different types of humans. I shouldn't have to say there are many different types of animals. I shouldn't have to say that there are so many variables. I shouldn't have to say that the influences even on humans and animals can change a normal animal or a normal human into something that is less than what it should be. Or, so, I shouldn't have to say that, but that is the reality. So then do you still hold the same ideas about, about yourself, about others, and about other life forms? Do I feel really stupid sometimes? Yes, because you know that you're catering to an unreality. Are we supposed to take for real and play for real in a fake reality? That's a good question. Are we still meant to take it to be real? Are we still meant to behave and react knowing this? Because obviously in the past, if you didn't know it, you're just reacting to the matrix. So sure, yes, even at that level, if you're a human being, you should be reacting a certain way. But like I say, if you are influenced by the matrix, if you become of the matrix, do we do the right thing because of the matrix or because of fear, or do we do it just because of our own inner voice, shall we say? Well, that's, usually it's a combination, I would think. And then after we do the wrong thing, like myself, you just become guilt-ridden for the rest of your life. So then the matrix has you also. And people will make you guilty too. And maybe you're meant to be guilty. I don't know. Maybe you're meant to, And I have really made a really bad video. I know that. Because, I wanted to... You see, I've had too many distractions. See, the matrix is, like... just throwing it up to me right now even, instead of concentrating on a few little things about the issue that was brought up to me, which I didn't want to deal with anyway, and now you can see why. But actually I could have still dealt with it at a superficial level. Now, I have to stop here because, words are part of the matrix. And, if you're making a video, you can't just say every word that comes into your head, But words are never enough to describe a matrix. I couldn't possibly find enough words or enough superlatives to describe what I really would think about this reality. And as I've said before, I don't think that, I think that in a matrix it's dangerous to be too idealistic, and it's dangerous to have no standards at all. In a matrix it is dangerous to have everything and anything. In a matrix it is, because everything and anything will be used as part of the matrix. I think someone else said this a while back, you can't have a fully functioning matrix with human beings without using all the finer qualities as part of that reality. So, and it's a reverse world, so in a reverse world, what appears to be a positive will be used for a negative. Negative will be used, everything will be switched round. It's only a matter of whether you open your eyes and see it. And if you do see it, you won't be too pleased probably. So, it is easier for people to close their eyes. Like I say, close your eyes, clear your heart, cut the cord. Are we human or are we dancers? Will your system be all right when you dream of home tonight? Well, the system, like I say, even with that song, and I've rambled off and gone on back onto the song, there's a couple of ways of even looking at that. What system? The system of the Matrix. That's from the point of view, depending on whether the dancer is of the Matrix or whether, it is the human with their society and their system, and I don't know what I'm talking about, or is it your system, your personal system? Like, is my personal system all right when I dream of home tonight? Well, obviously it's not, because I'm at low frequency, the body is because even the body is, look, I've said this before, everything is of the human being, and everything was given to the human being. So this is just my own personal fantasy, if you like, okay? So therefore, there's nothing that the human doesn't have. Anything that is not of the human is an unnecessary negative matrix, tool, device, reality around a human that is not essential or beneficial for a human being. I don't know whether I put that right. In other words, yeah, sure, we're spiritual beings in a physical body. The physical body, in my opinion, is an essential tool, an essential component of the human being in this reality. It is the only thing that is their connection, their only real connection. Everything else is of the matrix machine reality that is like a unity, but that the human being thinks is part of them. That's like the food for thought and the food for the body, the ideas, the fads, the fashions, all of that is of the matrix. The human thinks it is them. Everything that is around most human beings is the matrix. Very few human beings are just of themselves and do everything just for themselves. And even, yes, even the food you eat is always going to be the matrix, no matter what type of food it is, no matter where you think it comes from, whether you think it or know where it really comes from or what you really think it is all of the technical matrix. Has to be. Can't be anything else, unless you're living in a non-technical world, in which case then you can turn this off, But, you have to, if you're coming from any way of looking at reality, or whether it be a fantasy or the truth or whatever it is, I don't know, obviously I have my own little ideas, but, so, like I could go and, I could go and eat a plant, and I could say it's okay to eat a plant. That's natural. It's healthy. It's supposedly got this and that or whatever. I'm just making this up, by the way. But, you'll have to use your own imagination. Yeah, you have to use your own imagination. I'll get back to that when I do my movie thing. Gone off when I use that word. But, imagination will sometimes lead you to more of the real reality than just the technological information that you get. I'm not saying that it's all not, doesn't have some merit, but, like I say, as a human being, there's a lot more that you should just naturally know. But because you are in a matrix and because you're at the lowest level and so limited, like myself, so I have to do it the hard way. Everything I'm doing right now is doing it the slow, tedious, hard way, almost the impossible way. And there's no guarantee that you'll get to the light at the end of the tunnel, if you know what I mean, either, because you're doing it the way of the matrix. So you're doing it knowing that although there will be some reality there, that most of it isn't. So trying to decide which is the only little bit that has any real reality or any real merit, when it all appears to be real and all appears to have merit, like truth mingled with untruth, positive with negative, and but as a human being, it's only the positive that we acknowledge, so so that's the thing. So that is the problem, that's the mystery. You're in a mystery, a bit like trying to solve some mystery case, and very few clues, and a lot of the clues will be false ones. There'll be all sorts of deception around in the case. There'll be like when you're watching a mystery, okay, so I would say this just before I fold, and it's not really anything to do with what I was trying to get to, even though there's really nothing to get to, because I don't have a bottom line thing. Okay, I'm not saying there's a bottom line thing. There probably is, but I haven't got to it, so So it's for each person to find what they think is the bottom line of something, and to be able to see as much as is necessary for them to achieve whatever it is you want to achieve in this reality. And then if you're like me and you've lost sight of what you're even supposed to achieve because you thought you were just trying to make it a little bit more pleasant, just enjoy yourself somehow in this reality, well, then, you really you've really got a problem. See, I was also going to say about, sorry about that, what you take into your body. I was going to, even though that was not my intention at the start of the video, but I was just thinking, harking back to a previous video that I made quite a while ago, and that was a video about a movie. The movie was called Life for Ruth. I called it Blood for Life, I think, in the title, because I do try to be interesting. Sometimes the titles are better than the videos most of the time. Actually, I think that's important to have a good title, but sometimes it usually just clicks. It'll usually just come to me in a few seconds that, this isn't the video, but it makes sense, and it's almost a bottom line. But other times I forget the title. But either way, Blood for Life, but the movie was called Life for Ruth. And yeah, it really was about blood because she needed blood to keep living. She needed a blood transfusion after a water accident, a little girl. And but either way, that whole movie centered on that dispute, that idea that denying the blood on the grounds that taking blood into the body, this was a belief held by the carers or the father of the child. Now, based on a belief system that it's detrimental to take blood into the body. Now that's interesting, isn't it? This has just come to me. I've just got a little brainwave here, and I don't get many brainwaves, as you can imagine, that in our reality, you would be foolish not to get a blood transfusion if you're about to die, because the blood is life, and take it into your body. I think I lost my brainwave just then. Now, this belief was that if you take the blood into the body, it is a non-life force, and therefore it will cause you death. That's an interesting point. Some people think now that if you take blood from some other life form into you, that it is not that it's not a physical benefit, and that it may not be a benefit in the sense that they're valuing that life force over their own, or saying it's all life. So once again, we've gone into a spiritual way of looking at things, to where, how can I fault this when I say it myself? We're spiritual beings. Anything that is spiritual life is to be valued. Yeah, we'll see, it's all the matrix. So that will then become, there is a movie that I have never seen, okay, and I would probably, it's strange that I haven't seen it because I've seen most of the films of these actors, but this particular film I had only heard about a few months ago. Obviously it just happened onto me. It was called Solvent Green. Made in the 70s, I think, which is a fair while ago. Now, so this is a point, I haven't seen the movie. I just heard a little bit of what it was about in a synopsis. That's all, because I couldn't get the movie. Probably just as well. But, you can substitute something natural if you think that nature should be respected, shall we say, which I certainly, am of that mind myself. But, like I say, it's a matrix. So, it's very hard to really be able to tell what's really natural and what isn't, and what is going to be a benefit to you too. Because, there is a hierarchy too, as there certainly is in the matrix, and as there is in even the real world, if you follow me. What is more important? In the past it was acceptable, 50 years ago it was acceptable that a human being was above, a bird or a fish. It's okay to eat fish, that sort of thing. Some even say they're there for that reason. So it all depends on your viewpoint. But like I say, everything in the Matrix is about fads and fashions. Yeah, so it will be just where you are often swept along with all these obsessions, all these finickiness about what you take in, what you don't take in, what life you're sustaining, whether it be your own or something else. Look, it's got to the point now, this is just my own little thing here, really, is I think it's got to the point now where a lot of it doesn't matter because it's gone too far. Most of our reality isn't what we think. It's not possible. It may not be possible to go back to having any sort of natural world. You know, it may not be possible, you know. So what I'm saying is we're jumping up and down in a matrix about things that are non-existent, which is, yes, it's hard to see it that way, and maybe it's not that extreme. Maybe it's more extreme. Who knows? You know, these are things that each person has to find out. But all I'm saying is that, yeah, of course, if you're in a matrix. Either way, I went off the track there because it was like, that's because, see, the dog threw me. You know, the idea of taking in, you know, it will depend on what is the bottom line reality. Like that movie Life for Ruth. Like, which hadn't occurred to me. There were many ways of looking at that movie. You probably have to see the movie. You know, a very old movie, but to sort of see it how I would see it now, where it wasn't as cut and dried as what the movie put forward, or the reality at the time, and even the reality as people would see it now. Most people would not see human blood as a poison. They would see it as saving a life like in the movie, and to deny that would be a negative thing. Well, actually, I mean, you know, I mean, there's a, you know, I mean, you know, before, of course, before they knew that there were different blood types, it actually was poison. Like, you know, like if I lost blood and I got blood from another human being who was a different blood type, that would be just as lethal as not getting the blood. That's the reality. But of course now we now know the different blood types, and you know, but we're in a matrix, so I wonder what we really do know. But that sounds awful, I know. But that idea of taking that blood in, you know, because you know, like for instance, like just from my own personal point of view, like I've always liked to eat chicken. I like chicken. You know, I can go without other meats if I need to be. But I like chicken. And you know, when I don't eat it, as I have done in the past for various periods of time, I don't feel good and I get very fat. But of course, maybe I don't substitute really well. But you know, so, you know, if you're in a matrix, maybe that's not a good example, but it could well be, because, you know, you're doing something for your own reasons, whether they be health reasons, I did not eat chicken for a period of time for health reasons. I did not think that eating chicken was unhealthy. No. In fact, I think I'm going to fold up this video because actually it's getting a bit emotional for me, and I feel as though I feel like making these videos that I'm of the Matrix because I see those of the Matrix doing the same thing, and I actually feel phony doing it, strangely enough. Like to say, oh, I see this, so that made me feel guilty, so I don't. It's just all of the Matrix. It just becomes too ridiculous. You can't be genuine even in the Matrix because there's nothing genuine in a Matrix. Nothing. And if you are genuine, you'll be a laughing stock. It's just one big joke. But all I can really say is that, like, I'm just going to try to finish up on this, that, ideas and ideologies aside, whether you like to eat chicken or you like to eat carrots or you like to eat the tree or you like to, whatever. Whether you're consuming something that's totally of the Matrix. It's all of the Matrix, I would say. There's natural Matrix, there's not so natural Matrix, there's our junk food Matrix. Yep, it's not going to make too much difference, I wouldn't think. Not at this point in time, not now that not now that the Matrix is the all of everything. But a lot of people will be jumping up and down, yes, thinking that everything makes a difference. It's too late to make a difference now. It's too late to worry about whether you save this or don't save that or whether you do this. It is. I mean, it could just well be, oh, well, maybe if you're seen to be doing the right thing, it might make a difference. I don't know. But will it really make a difference? I would doubt it, but at the same time, it all depends on how much mind power the human really can impart onto the Matrix now. And whether that mind power will be direct or will be merely, as it has been and always has been and probably will continue to be, just used by the Matrix to continue the Matrix in a way that the Matrix stays the same. The purpose of the Matrix is for the Matrix to stay and to make sure that humans stay and play. And while you think that there is a point to the Matrix, while you think that you have input into the Matrix, while you think you can change the Matrix if you think there's negative things you don't like, provided you're a human and you think that way, you're playing in the Matrix, the more ideologies you have, the more causes you have, the more fashions you follow. You mightn't think it's a fashion. You might think it's a legitimate issue or a legitimate thing. There's nothing legitimate in a video game Matrix. I mean, it would be if all things were equal, but it isn't a human Matrix. It's only a human mind Matrix. But it's not a human Earth is what I mean. It's a Matrix. A Matrix is not a random system. So, it's not It's not a natural earth. So it's not about, humans making direct decisions that affect the natural world. Because there is no natural world, and even if there was, humans wouldn't be able to affect it directly because you're going through a matrix. You're going through a matrix, you could say. You're in a matrix, so everything that happens is through the matrix, because until you're aware that the matrix has infiltrated everything and that you're not the all-powerful being that you probably should be, but you're powerless in a matrix, because the matrix, you've given the matrix the power, or we have, whether directly or indirectly over a long period of time. That's probably not relevant anyway. It's but I don't think this video has actually made any sense. But like the solvent green. So, you can substitute something you could substitute foods, so that way you feel that you're helping nature along, all this sort of stuff. But then your body might be less benefited by the artificial food, even though you're spiritually might be benefiting, because you might feel, like I've said before, if you, I'm the sort of person that can't eat a fish on a plate with the eyes looking at me, I'm just going to be blunt about that. In fact, I can't stand it at all, even seeing it. Now, but provided it comes in the manufactured plastic matrix version, I can separate, you see, the reality from, and that's how it is. And, that's what I say. It's a bit of a minefield in that respect. Now, oh dear, I apologise for wasting all this time and getting so little into it. I even lost that train of thought with the blood and the idea of taking things in. I just can't quite get it. It's gone from me. You're saying, well, if things just come and go, you're not very reliable. No, and you're not very solid. You're supposed to be a spiritual human being, so you should. But it's not so much that. You can be still solid in what you basically think about things, but the thoughts come and go. It's just this making the video and the actual surroundings. And so I was just going to finish up, because this just come to me, if you're still there, if you haven't all fell asleep, this just come to me quite recently. There's a movie called Bridge on the River Kwai. It's not a favourite film of mine, it wasn't even on my list, but it come to me the other day because in this movie, it's called The Bridge on the River Kwai. It's an Academy Award-winning movie. Now, in this movie, everything centres around a group of, they're soldiers at the time, there's a war going on as the movie goes. And a certain group of soldiers, supposedly on the American side, like that's like English, are captured by the other side, which I'm not sure what side they are. You'd have to see the movie. But they're from a different place, and they're obviously who the Americans or us or the English are fighting against. I say us because that would have been what we would have been with, and what we tend to side with in most films, if I'm not incorrect. At this period of time, I'm still correct, and as far as the past goes. What it will be in the future, who knows? We'll see things different. So then the video and the movie will not seem as sensible, but that doesn't matter. These group of soldiers are captured by the enemy, shall we say, yes, and in the course of the movie, while they are captured, they're prisoners of war, they are made to build a bridge. Their skills are being put to use by their enemy because they're captured. They are forced. They could have said no, but if they'd said no, they'd be gone. So the main captain or whatever of these captured soldiers, of the Allies or whatever you'd like to call them, agrees to build this bridge because otherwise they will be got rid of. Even though he knows that in building the bridge, he's building it for the enemy, a benefit to them. The bridge has to be built to serve them. If the bridge is built, it will help them and could cause loss of life for his own soldiers or his own side in this battle, shall we say, in the war. But they're prisoners, and if his men will be killed, his soldiers will be killed if they don't agree to build it. So over a fair period of time, their engineering skills and all the skills that they have, the physical skills and their know-how, are used by the enemy to build this bridge. And when the bridge is finally built, yes, it is going to be used to facilitate the destruction and the loss of life of their own soldiers or their own side. But what happens, strangely enough, is that in this movie, if you watched it, the main captain that agreed to this, and when the bridge is built, he has the opportunity to destroy the bridge, to save the lives of his own soldiers and perhaps win the war or the battle for his own side, if you want to look at it that way. And and all of a sudden it becomes a strange thing, which the whole movie is based. It's the bridge on the River Kwai, around his inability, when it finally comes down to it, to blow up and destroy the bridge and save his own side, and win the war, win the battle, and protect his own soldiers, because he has put so much effort into building this bridge. He's proud of this bridge, even though he's built it for the opposing side, the enemy. He finds it hard to blow up the bridge. He's like, I think he's almost famous for saying, what, blow up the bridge? Can't blow up the bridge, I've created the bridge. It's almost he's created something that he didn't want to create, that he doesn't like. And now he's proud of it because he's put so much effort into it, put all his know-how into it. And he literally can't blow up the bridge to save his own life, to save his own soldier's life, to save and to perhaps win the battle for his own side. He's almost siding with the enemy, sleeping with the enemy, whatever, and he doesn't want to, but he can't help it. I just wonder sometimes where like if we're not a bit like that in this world now with our technology and stuff, it's become our friend. We use it. We've helped create it in a way. We're siding with the enemy. We're using the enemy. We're proud of the enemy. We're proud of how far we've advanced, that we've got a world and a society and a reality that is more advanced than what it used to be. We think it's more advanced than what it used to be. We think it's a benefit to us. We think we've progressed. We think we've evolved. Because we don't realise that there was no evolution, because you can't evolve from what is already created that is correct. It's like I say, you can't improve on nature, because nature just falls into place in a perfect way. You can't improve on perfection, as they say, but if you believe that everything evolves and and you're striving for a perfection that doesn't exist, that already was, and you've actually went into a technological world that degrades all that and actually makes something less. So then, of course, you do believe that, yes, you should chase perfection and, yes, you should evolve, because you don't realise that you already were, and that, of course, you're in a limited low state now, as we all are. Like I say, it's hard for me to promote the human body as being some magical piece of perfection when I see my own and I feel it, and it's attacked and it's falling apart and it's full of this and that, and it doesn't feel good. And yes, then you're in the dilemma of whether you should eat the chicken to give yourself a bit of energy. But then, of course, the matrix might say, oh, well, no, you can't do that anymore. It made you feel good in the past, but now you've got the guilt thing going. So therefore, if you eat that, you'll be at a lower level spiritually. So you're in that's the catch-22, the dilemma of the matrix. I don't know why, but yeah, I'm not making sense here at all, am I? No, not at all. And I went on to the bridge on the River Kwai, and I'm laughing at my own silliness in the video, because they're going from bad to worse. But yeah, a lot of people could not walk away from the bridge anymore. They can't blow up the bridge, just like he couldn't blow up his own creation in the bridge, even though he originally didn't want it and knew that it was a negative thing. I've often said that about, I think I said it in a previous thing about technology. And like we're just going further into it, in the sense that, and like our saying yes to it is like, I think it's like wanting the matrix to have full gradual acceptance. I think that's what it comes down to. I think the matrix already does exist. It already has full technological ability. It always has. It has the full thing. But the whole idea is for me to accept that, but not only accept that, but actually endorse that. Is that the word? I don't think that's the right word. No. How can you endorse something that already is? To embrace that. Is that the word? Like it and see it as a benefit, and see it as the correct thing, the correct state of being. And is it possible to, I don't think it's possible now to, I don't think it's possible for people to blow up the bridge now. Not at a mental level. Even if they could do it physically. They're like that fella in the movie. It's like, oh, we don't want to go back. We don't want to go back. We don't want to go back to the Dark Ages. But, we don't want to go back to a more primitive time. We don't want to go back to no technology or less technology even. We don't want that because we see that as a backward step. Because, but, if you come from the viewpoint or the reality, depending on how you look at it, and that will be your own decision. If you come from the reality that the human being is the centre and still the main and only really life force in the earth or in the matrix, depending on how far you want to take the natural or the artificial, then, you have to, I would say myself, say that if the technology, regardless of how advanced it is and regardless of how beneficial it appears to be, if that is denigrating or taking from the human, making the human less, taking away human abilities, taking away human thinking, making it not as valuable, taking it over, using it, the technology is using you, you're not using technology, and that's really the reality of how it is, then it is not a backward step. You really do need to go back, in order to go forward. Yes, we need a clean slate, but if you are going to have a clean slate, it can't be anything to do with technology. Not if you hold to that way of looking at reality. If you don't, then you might see technology as some sort of answer or some sort of key or some sort of, going into this spiritual thing, which, I'm even reluctant, even though it's the reality, because even spirituality can be turned against a human being. There are lots of people who will see spirituality in different ways too, and will say there's no reason that, if you're in a matrix, and also many people will, I suppose, say, well, look, if you say you're in a matrix, and like if you want to take it to the extreme to where you say it's all artificial, and we're in it, so it's possible that we're part of it. How could you possibly say that there's nature? It'd almost be like saying that is your nature. Your nature is really technical. Well, that's another way of looking at it, and not a way that I care to, but it could still be a reality. So, I don't tend to do that. I tend to say that is quite likely possible and probably is a reality. But, I still see humans as something that is not part of it. They appear to be, and they're stuck in it, but they're not meant to be. And, well, you might say maybe they aren't meant to be, maybe they've become part of it. I have to fold up. This is ridiculous. I've not gone well here. I better say good day or whatever, and that's it.